June 19, 1865, Galveston, Texas. Union General Gordon Granger stands on a balcony and reads General Order No. 3. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, 6 months after the Civil War ended, the last enslaved people in the Confederate States finally hear they're free. This moment, Juneteenth, became more than an American holiday. It became a symbol, not of freedom granted, but of freedom delayed, denied, and finally claimed. And that symbol traveled to places that never knew Texas, to struggles that seemed unconnected to American slavery, to movements that found in this delayed liberation a reflection of their own fight. This is about how a Texas celebration became a global metaphor, not through direct influence, but through what it represents. The gap between promised freedom and lived reality, the persistence required to claim rights that should already exist. Juneteenth wasn't just about learning you were free. It was about the time between legal emancipation and actual liberation. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed January 1, 1863, but it only applied to Confederate states, and it only mattered where Union armies could enforce it. In Texas, far from major battlefields, slavery continued. Enslaved people worked plantations, bore children into bondage, died in chains, all while legally free. When Granger arrived with troops to enforce emancipation, the freed people understood something profound. Laws on paper don't guarantee freedom. Freedom requires power to enforce laws, and sometimes freedom requires waiting, organizing, surviving until enforcement arrives. This understanding, born in Texas in 1865, would resonate globally. Juneteenth celebrations started immediately. June 19, 1866, the first anniversary, saw gatherings across Texas. Formerly enslaved people marked their Freedom Day. As Black Americans migrated north and west during the Great Migration, they brought Juneteenth traditions. By the 1920s, celebrations occurred in cities across America, but the holiday faced opposition. Why resistance to Black commemoration? Economic pressure against taking time off, legal barriers in some states. Juneteenth became more than celebration. It became assertion. Black Americans claiming the right to mark their history, to define their freedom, to exist on their own terms. Here's what made Juneteenth resonate beyond its specific context. It embodied the universal experience of delayed justice. Every colonized nation that won independence decades after being capable of self-governance. Every marginalized group that achieved legal rights long after deserving them. Every person who heard you're equal while experiencing continued oppression. Juneteenth symbolized that gap, and in symbolizing it, it provided language, imagery, framework for other struggles. In the 1950s and 62nd, African nations fought for independence. Ghana in 1957, multiple nations in 1960's Year of Africa, Kenya, Algeria, others through the decade. These struggles didn't directly reference Juneteenth, but Black American civil rights activists supporting African independence did. African leaders recognized this too. Kwame Nkrumah, seek ye first the political kingdom, political independence was Juneteenth. Economic freedom required more struggle. Caribbean nations had their own emancipation days, predating Juneteenth. Trinidad's Emancipation Day, Jamaica's Emancipation Day, August 1, 1834. But Juneteenth offered something these earlier commemorations didn't. Recent enough to have living witnesses in the 20th century, yet part of a successful eventual liberation. Caribbean activists in the mid-20th century used American civil rights imagery, including Juneteenth symbolism, to argue for continued decolonization, not just from European powers but from economic neocolonialism. The connection was psychological as much as political. The delayed freedom of Juneteenth mirrored the delayed full sovereignty Caribbean nations experienced. In the 1960s, the non-aligned movement brought together nations from Africa, Asia, Latin America. They shared experience of colonialism, struggle for self-determination, continued economic exploitation. American civil rights became part of this solidarity. The Black Panther Party had international chapters. African, Asian, and Latin American liberation movements cited American civil rights struggles. Juneteenth fit into this framework, a symbol of how formal freedom doesn't end struggle, how continued vigilance maintains liberty. This wasn't direct causation. Juneteenth didn't inspire these movements, but it provided symbolic vocabulary they found useful. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted in 1948. Eleanor Roosevelt chaired the drafting committee. The Declaration emerged from these horrors but also from longer struggles: colonial oppression, racial discrimination, economic exploitation. American civil rights activists, conscious of Juneteenth's lesson about delayed implementation, pushed for strong human rights language. What good are rights on paper without enforcement mechanisms? This tension between declared rights and realized rights became central to human rights discourse. The Juneteenth gap. In the 1950s-60s, Black American activists deliberately framed civil rights as human rights, connecting domestic struggle to international movements. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail invokes natural law and moral imperatives transcending national boundaries. Malcolm X took American racial injustice to the United Nations, arguing it was international human rights violation, not just domestic issue. These framings carried Juneteenth's implicit message: promise freedom means nothing without actual implementation. Legal equality means nothing without lived equality. Today's international human rights advocacy still grapples with the Juneteenth problem. How do you enforce rights? What do you do when states ignore obligations? The International Criminal Court, Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, economic sanctions for rights violations, all attempt to close the gap between declared rights and realized rights. Juneteenth didn't create these mechanisms, but it symbolizes the problem they address. Indigenous peoples worldwide face ongoing colonization, land theft, cultural erasure, legal subjugation. Many indigenous movements reference delayed justice, treaties signed but violated, rights recognized but unenforced, sovereignty acknowledged but undermined. The Juneteenth parallel is clear. Legal recognition doesn't guarantee freedom. Continued struggle maintains and expands rights. Indigenous activists in North America, Australia, Latin America have noted this parallel, not claiming Juneteenth as their holiday, but recognizing shared experience of promised but denied liberation. Women gained voting rights in many countries over the 20th century. Legal equality followed decades later. Actual equality? Still fighting. LGBTQ+ people won legal protections, marriage equality, anti-discrimination laws, but continued violence, discrimination, economic inequality persist. These movements understand Juneteenth's lesson viscerally. The law changing is one step. Society changing takes longer. Full liberation requires sustained effort. Juneteenth celebrations increasingly incorporate these intersectional struggles. Recognition that liberation is connected, that delayed freedom is shared experience. Environmental racism mirrors Juneteenth's geography. Marginalized communities bear disproportionate environmental burdens. Toxic waste sites, polluted air, contaminated water. Environmental laws exist. Enforcement is selective. Protection depends on community power. Environmental justice activists explicitly connect to civil rights history, including Juneteenth symbolism. The fight for clean environment is fight for human dignity, for freedom from imposed suffering. Climate justice advocates globally use similar framing. Those least responsible for climate change suffer most. Legal agreements exist. Paris Agreement. Implementation lags. The Juneteenth gap again. In 2020, amid Black Lives Matter protests following George Floyd's murder, Juneteenth gained unprecedented visibility. Social media spread awareness globally. People in Europe, Asia, Latin America learned about Juneteenth for the first time, recognized parallels to their own struggles, adopted symbols and language. #Juneteenth trended worldwide, not just Americans commemorating, but global communities connecting their liberation struggles to this American symbol. In 2021, Juneteenth became a U.S. federal holiday. This federal recognition itself echoed the delayed justice theme, 156 years from the event to federal acknowledgement. As of 2026, Juneteenth is taught in schools beyond the United States. International curricula use it to discuss the gap between legal and actual freedom, the importance of community commemoration, how marginalized groups maintain culture through celebration, ongoing nature of liberation struggles. Universities globally offer courses examining Juneteenth in comparative context with other liberation movements. Juneteenth's global resonance isn't about direct historical influence. Most global movements developed independently. Rather, Juneteenth provides symbolic language for shared human experience, the delay between promised and realized freedom, the persistence required to claim rights, the necessity of commemoration and community. This is why diverse movements find Juneteenth relevant, not because it inspired them, but because it articulates what they already knew. Juneteenth teaches that freedom isn't a moment, it's a process. The Emancipation Proclamation was a moment. Freedom arriving in Texas was another moment. But liberation? That took generations. Still taking generations. This lesson applies universally. Every nation that gained independence but struggled with the aftermath. Every movement that won legal rights but faced continued discrimination. Every person promised equality but denied opportunity. Juneteenth says, the gap between promise and reality is where the real work happens. You don't have to be Black American to understand Juneteenth's lesson. You don't have to be American at all. If you've ever been promised something that wasn't delivered, you understand. If you've ever seen laws change while conditions stayed the same, you understand. If you've ever had to keep fighting for rights you supposedly already had, you understand. That's why Juneteenth resonates globally. It's fundamentally human. The experience of delayed justice is universal. In 2026, liberation struggles continue worldwide. Racial justice, gender equality, indigenous sovereignty, environmental protection, economic fairness. Each struggle faces the Juneteenth gap. Laws change faster than society. Rights are granted but not implemented. Freedom is promised but delayed. Juneteenth reminds us, this gap is normal, expected, part of every liberation struggle. But so is persistence. So is community. So is celebration of progress while acknowledging work remaining. Juneteenth started in Texas, but it belongs to anyone who's ever had to wait for freedom that should have arrived already. To anyone who's had to organize to claim rights that were supposedly guaranteed. To anyone who celebrates liberation while recognizing the journey continues. That's everyone. Every struggle, every movement, every person seeking dignity and freedom. June 19, 1865, in Galveston, Texas, formerly enslaved people learned they were free. The celebration that followed became a global symbol, not because it was unique, but because it was universal. Freedom delayed but claimed, justice promised but fought for, liberation ongoing. If Juneteenth's global resonance revealed something new about liberation struggles, share this perspective with someone who needs to understand that freedom is always a process, never just a moment. And if you want more explorations of how specific historical moments illuminate universal human experiences, there's more here. Remember, The gap between promised freedom and lived freedom is where the work happens. Juneteenth reminds us to celebrate progress while continuing the struggle. That's a lesson that truly transcends borders.